was my birthday again. 53, not that the number mattered much anymore. The house was still and quiet in the soft light of a late winter morning in Ohio. The kind of cold that didn't bite, just lingered like something unresolved. The coffee was already brewing. I padded across the tile floor, slippers making that familiar shuffle. My wife, Clara, was sitting at the table, her hair still damp from the shower. She smiled as I walked in, that practiced smile that says, "Yes, it's your day, and yes, I remembered." A single candle flickered on a muffin, our little tradition. No balloons, no big fuss. Just the two of us now. The kids were grown, scattered across different states, calling in at convenient hours, promising to visit soon. But I didn't mind. I'd built this family brick by brick, year after year, in quiet ways. I'd stayed steady, even when things weren't. Family is not an important thing. It's everything, Michael J. Fox once said. I used to believe that like gospel. We took the picture, same corner of the kitchen, same pose, and then she said she needed to step out for just a bit. "Quick errand," she murmured, grabbing her coat. And just like that, she was gone, again. It wasn't the first time. Every year, on this exact morning, Clara disappeared for a few hours. She always came back smiling, as if nothing happened. I used to think it was my imagination. But I'm not a fool, and I'm not naive. Not anymore. This morning, I waited. When she left, I stared at the untouched candle. It flickered once, then snuffed itself out. The coffee had gone cold in my mug by the time I looked out the window. Her car was gone from the driveway, again. I went to the drawer where I kept the old notes. Nothing dramatic, just small scribbles. Dates, times, same day, same vanishing act. "Be back soon," her text said. No punctuation, no heart emoji like she used to, just those 3 words. She might as well have said, "Don't ask." I sat there for another 10 minutes, then 20. The slice of cake I'd set aside for later was still untouched on the counter. That's when I felt it. Not jealousy, not anger, something more hollow, off, like a joke everyone else gets but you. And in this town, people talk. Neighbors peer from behind lace curtains. Smiles stretch a little too long. And secrets, they don't stay buried long. "Fool me once, shame on you," I muttered under my breath. "Fool me twice." There had been excuses, of course. Work calls, last-minute errands, a friend needing help. I had let it slide every year. Told myself I was overthinking it, but today was different. I sat at the kitchen table, pen in hand, tracing the pattern in ink this time. The times lined up too neatly, always between 9 and 11 a.m., never earlier, never later, always on my birthday. The same damn window. I looked at the fridge, where a magnet still held a photo from 3 years ago. I looked younger then, less aware, happier, maybe just unaware. I thought about something my buddy Hank once told me, years back after his divorce. "Silence can feel like a prison," he said, "but it's the kind you build yourself, brick by quiet brick." I wasn't going to build anymore. I stood, grabbed my jacket and my keys. My phone buzzed with a message I didn't check. Instead, I stepped into the cold, into the slow flurry of snow that had just started falling. Not heavy, just enough to dust the world white. Her tracks were fresh in the snow. I followed them with the car. The town rolled by like a memory. Diners I hadn't eaten in for months. The old gas station where I used to take the kids for slushies after Little League. Nothing had changed. Except me. My hands gripped the wheel tighter. My pulse wasn't racing, but it was there, just under the surface. I kept my distance, saw her car ahead, then slowed when she turned onto Lincoln Avenue. She didn't know I was behind her. She never had to wonder where I was. I used to think that was trust. Now I wondered if it was just comfort. For decades, I'd supported her dreams, put aside my wants, raised the kids, held the house together while she took evening classes, started businesses, tried new things, and I'd never asked for much. Just honesty. That's all I ever wanted. A memory crept in. My 47th birthday. I had waited with a cake, candles lit. She never showed until late, and I never asked why. I was tired of never asking. Americans talk a lot about marriage vows, for better or worse. But no one tells you that worse can be quiet, subtle, a slow unraveling. I turned the corner and saw her car, parked, but not near any store, not the post office, not even the cafe. It was the rundown community center near the edge of town. The kind that hosts food drives and old men's poker nights. She stepped out of her car with a large manila envelope clutched in her arms and walked in. Just walked in. I pulled into the lot across the street, hands still on the wheel, engine running. My breath fogged the windshield as I sat there staring at that weathered red door she'd just disappeared behind. What was in the envelope? Why there? How long had this been going on? I didn't move. Not yet. I wanted to. Every muscle in my body screamed for confrontation, but I waited. I wasn't chasing her. I was chasing the truth. I stayed in the car longer than I thought I would. The engine off, my fingers resting against the cold steering wheel. Across the street, the community center sat under a gray sky, its brick exterior faded and chipped. The old mural of children holding hands had peeled in places, like forgotten memories. A mailbox tilted sideways. A cracked sign near the entrance read, Community Assistance and Resources, the kind of place people drive past without really seeing. He'd gone in there with a manila envelope like it was just another errand, but nothing about this felt normal. I told myself to wait. Just watch. Don't jump to conclusions. That line rang in my head. Sometimes it's better to know than to hope. I don't remember who said it. Might have been on a podcast, or maybe I said it to myself years ago and forgot, but it felt real now. A woman came out holding a tray of what looked like coffee cups. A teenager in a hoodie followed her, then a man with a clipboard. People moved in and out like this was routine, but no one greeted him. No "Hey John," no nods. He'd blended in. He didn't want to be recognized. That thought pushed something heavy against my ribs. 20 minutes passed. I told myself I'd just drive home, let it go. But I didn't. Instead, I opened the door, stepped into the cold, and crossed the street with my coat pulled tight. Not because I was jealous. Not because I thought he had a woman inside. But because I needed to know who he was when I wasn't looking. The receptionist smiled as I entered. Young, maybe early 20s, earbuds in one ear. I cleared my throat. Hi, I was wondering, I'm thinking about volunteering here, I said, keeping my voice even. Is there someone I could talk to? She nodded. Sure. What area? I hesitated. Mentorship, I guess. Do you know John? John Callahan? Her brows pulled together. John? She tapped the air. Don't think we have a John. You mean David Ross? I felt my stomach drop. I think so, I lied, steadying myself. He runs the youth group? Yeah, room 4, down the hall, past the vending machine. I smiled and thanked her. My face stayed polite. My hands shook. David Ross. He had a name I'd never heard, a life I'd never seen. The hallway smelled like old coffee and bleach. The floor squeaked underfoot. I passed an open door where 2 volunteers packed food boxes. Just as I reached the vending machine, someone stepped out of the side office. Madeline? I froze. It was Gloria. She still had the same sharp eyes from high school, but her hair had gone silver at the temples. We hadn't spoken since our reunion 15 years ago. Gloria, I said, forcing a smile. Wow, it's been forever, she laughed softly. You volunteering? Just looking into it, I said, unsure of my voice. Well, we could use good people. You'd love it here. Great crowd. Especially David. He's been running the mentorship group for years now. I swallowed. David Ross? She nodded, cheerful. Oh yeah, he's kind of a mystery man. Keeps to himself, but the teens trust him. He's here every Thursday and Saturday morning. Quiet guy. Doesn't talk much about home. That last sentence stuck. I asked something about the group, nodded through her reply, and promised to catch up over coffee. She gave me her number again. I tucked it in my pocket and left. Outside, the sun had edged past the trees, casting pale shadows on the pavement. I sat in the car and stared at the building, breathing slow. It wasn't about another woman. It was about a man who'd split his life clean down the middle and never told me. My birthdays. Every year he'd been here. Not golfing, not running errands. Here as someone else. The questions came hard and fast. Why lie? What was he hiding? How did I not know? I scrolled through my phone, finding old birthday photos. The smiles, the slice of cake, the times he'd vanished. They didn't match the stories. Never had. And I'd believed him. I told myself not to cry. I hadn't done anything wrong, but I still felt small. Played. Like someone who walked into the wrong movie halfway through. One picture, my 51st birthday, showed him wearing the same jacket I just saw him take off at the door. Same time of day, different place. I opened my browser and searched David Ross, Mentorship, Ohio. A small article popped up. Local blog. Community Spotlight, the man who shows up. No picture, just praise. One paragraph read, David Ross has been a cornerstone of our youth support group, offering guidance with humility. He never seeks credit. And he never mentioned me, no family, no mention of a wife, just him. I stared at the screen, every click louder in my chest. I saved the article, screenshot it, then texted Gloria. I need to know more about this David Ross. My hands were stiff from the cold, but I didn't feel it. I just sat there, the car silent around me, the engine off, the world turning while my life stood still. Then my phone buzzed. It was him. Running late, be home soon. I stared at the message. Simple, deceptive. Like he hadn't just stepped out of one world into another. I smiled at the screen and started following him again. I got home before him. Not by much, but enough. The driveway was empty, the porch light on, even though it wasn't yet dark. I let myself in, kicking off my shoes like I always did, setting my keys in the ceramic dish by the door. The house was quiet, but not peaceful. It had a strange heaviness to it, like silence with weight. His cologne lingered faintly in the hallway, not fresh, but enough to make me pause. I stood there, staring at the space where his jacket usually hung, trying to quiet the noise inside my own head. I moved slowly through the living room, then the kitchen. Everything looked normal, too normal. The throw pillows arranged neatly, the dishes from breakfast stacked in the sink, the mail left unopened on the counter. But I noticed things I hadn't before. A photo of our 10th anniversary on the shelf. He had his arm around me, smiling, confident. That was the year he started this double life. I just didn't know it then. I sat on the couch and held my phone, rereading the last message he sent. Be home soon. Simple, casual, deceptive. A voice in my head whispered, the worst part of betrayal isn't the lie. It's that it made you question your own judgment. I told myself I wasn't going to confront him yet. Not tonight. Not until I had more. Instead, I got up and walked to the study. The bookshelves were lined with titles he'd recommended over the years. Self-help, psychology, leadership. I scanned the spines without knowing what I was looking for. My hand paused on one. The Mask We Wear. I pulled it. It fell open. A piece of paper fluttered to the floor. I bent down slowly, heart thudding. It was a letter, folded neatly. Thick paper. A woman's handwriting. To David, it began. I read it once, then again, and again. She wrote about how he'd helped her son, a troubled teen, how his mentorship had changed the boy's life. You're the man who healed what no doctor could. She thanked him, praised him, signed it, with eternal gratitude, M. The letter was dated 3 years ago. She called him a retired Army medic. My hands trembled. He'd never served. Or at least, he said he hadn't. I sat down on the floor, knees stiff, the letter spread out in front of me like a confession. My head started spinning, not with rage, but clarity. 5 years ago, we'd canceled a vacation at the last minute. He told me there was a veterans emergency. I didn't even blink, didn't ask questions. Now that memory looked different. I remembered the way he stepped outside to take a call, the tightness in his voice, the unexplained bank withdrawal a few days later. I brushed it off then. We all do that, give the benefit of the doubt, especially when you love someone. I thought back to another time, 4th of July. He flinched at the fireworks, said it was too loud. Back then, I chalked it up to a headache. But now, maybe he wasn't lying. Maybe he was hiding something else entirely. I got up, numb, and walked to the hallway closet, pulled out a box of old birthday cards, receipts, journals. I laid them out on the dining table. Some years, he'd forgotten to write me a card. Others, he left a post-it with a scribble. But the pattern was there. A hole in every birthday. Emotional distance disguised as absent-mindedness. I opened my laptop, scanned old emails. One receipt stood out. from a rural diner off the interstate, close to a veterans rehab center. I pulled up a map. The route was clear. The community center sat right along that path. Same direction, same timeline. It hit me hard. My birthday wasn't just the day he slipped away. It was the day he stepped back into another life. A life with rules, routines, and a name I never knew. David Ross. He was never really gone. He was just someone else. I didn't cry. Instead, I picked up a pen and started writing. A timeline, year by year, detail by detail, not for revenge, for clarity, for truth. I considered calling Gloria again, but something held me back. This wasn't about gossip. It was about building a case, with facts, not feelings. And yet, inside, I felt a shame I couldn't shake. How did I become the woman who doesn't ask questions? My mother used to say, some women carry the home like a cross, hoping silence will keep it sacred. Not me, not anymore. Just before bed, I sat at the edge of the mattress staring at the glow of my phone. I typed the message slowly. Remind me again, how did you spend your 40th birthday? I watched as the little gray bubble turned to read. No reply. He didn't answer that night, but his eyes would say enough the next morning. I stepped into the center's lobby like someone walking into another life. The air was stale, the fluorescent bulbs flickering overhead. Voices murmured down the hallway. The hum of a copier, a soft door closing. I moved past the front waiting area, chairs lined in rigid rows, sign-up sheets on a folding table. Quiet. Too quiet. I passed doors labeled Youth Outreach, Counseling, Records. Each sign a quiet lie, each label pointing to some hidden truth. I paused at a door marked Archives, a gap of light under it, a faint murmur beyond. My heart thudded. This place had been more than charity. I stiffened and edged closer, pressing my ear to the door. The corridor felt wrong. Tension stretched my nerves. Every breath felt loud. I yanked that door open. Inside, I found a locked metal cabinet labeled After Hours Logs. My palm trembled as I rummaged my purse for a paperclip. I bent down, picked the lock, wrenching it open just enough. Inside, rows of printed call logs. 3:00 a.m. calls, dozens of them, under the name David Ross. The list was middle of the night after midnight. Caller IDs from small towns I'd never heard. My vision blurred. I snapped pictures with my phone. The world felt hollow, splintered. I forced myself to breathe. I opened a second drawer. It held a photo box, sealed. I pried it open. Inside was an unedited photograph. Clara standing next to another man in a garden. No date, no filter, just raw evidence. My fingers shook. My heart clenched. I stared at the faces, her smile with him. I'd walked these halls, breathed these walls, never knowing this part of her life existed. My phone buzzed. I jumped. I looked down. A message from Clara. Hope you're enjoying your surprise birthday. I typed back, what surprise? Silence. I walked out into the hallway. There was Gloria, leaning against the wall, arms crossed. She looked startled. Oh, didn't expect to see you here at this hour, she said lightly. Her face said more than the words. She knew. I didn't push. I cataloged it. Their reaction. Her pause. Everything. I traced a map in my head. The basement wings, private client rooms, hidden meeting spaces. I recalled his late nights labeled off-duty work. The calls at 3 a.m., the envelope, the missing hours, all aligned. A phrase spun through my thoughts. Secrets wear thin under light. I wasn't chasing shadows anymore. I was drawing the map. Outside, I stepped onto the sidewalk, phone in hand. One of the 3 a.m. numbers called me back. Unknown caller, the screen read. My chest tightened. I didn't answer. The phone rang at 10:07 p.m., its screen glowing against the dim light of the kitchen. I'd been sitting there alone, nursing a glass of water I didn't want. I stared at the number, no name, no clue, and for a second I nearly let it ring out, but my finger moved before my brain did. Hello? There was a pause on the other end, long enough to feel personal. A woman's voice broke through, low and almost cautious. Is this Naomi? I stiffened. Yes. Who is this? Another pause. You don't know me, but I know your husband. My breath snagged. I put the call on speaker and slid my other phone beside it, quietly hitting record. My hand trembled just enough to notice. The air in the kitchen felt like it dropped 10 degrees. "I'm sorry to call so late," the woman said. "My name is Marie." I didn't say a word. She continued. "I met David, your husband, a few years ago at a support group for trauma recovery. He said he was a widower, Army medic. Lost everything in a car crash." Every word felt like a scratch across glass. We were together for nearly 4 years, she added. I didn't flinch. I didn't shout. I just listened, one breath at a time. "He hated red wine," she said, like it was proof. "He used to quote Pablo Neruda, something about carrying your heart in his. He had a small birthmark under his right shoulder blade. Looks like a crescent moon." I shut my eyes. That wasn't general knowledge. That wasn't guesswork. That was real. That was mine. No, ours. I opened my eyes again and stared at the salt shaker on the counter like it had answers. "How long exactly?" I asked. She hesitated. "We met 5 years ago. Broke it off last year. He started getting distant. I thought it was stress. But yesterday, I saw a calendar reminder pop up on an old shared app. It said Naomi's birthday. That's when I knew. Yesterday was my birthday too." I stopped breathing for a moment. I remembered that day. He said he was on call with a friend's crisis, said he'd make it up to me. I'd accepted it, like so many other nights. "He wasn't just vanishing," I whispered. "He was replacing me." She didn't reply. "How many birthdays?" I asked. "How many years?" "3, maybe 4, she said softly. "And Naomi, he has a son." My ears rang. "He's 5. His name is Dylan. He looks just like him. Same eyes, same laugh." The silence between us stretched too long. Do you want me to send a picture?" she asked. I didn't answer. A second later, my phone buzzed. A text. I tapped it. And there it was. A little boy. Big brown eyes. Crooked smile. My husband's entire face on a child I'd never seen. I didn't drop the phone. I placed it on the table like it burned. I stood there, not crying, not yet. I walked to the fridge, looked at the family photos we'd magneted there for years. Trips, barbecues, birthdays. They all looked fake now. Like stage props for someone else's play. Back at the table, I sat down, picked up a pen, grabbed the back of an envelope and began writing everything she'd said. Dates, names, locations, times. I wasn't his wife anymore. I was the detective he didn't think I'd ever become. I asked her calmly to send me any receipts, old texts, anything that could tie the timelines together. She said she'd try. I told her not to reach out again, unless it was proof. She agreed. Then she said something that made my skin prickle. "Naomi, he said your name in his sleep once." I looked out the kitchen window, the dark pressing up against the glass. "That's how I found you," she said. I whispered, mostly to myself. Then I wasn't invisible after all. And that somehow hurt even more. The house was quiet, that kind of quiet that didn't settle but lingered like a question left hanging in the air. I stepped into the study, closed the door behind me, and let the weight of the day catch up. The desk lamp flickered once before it steadied. I laid everything out. Call logs, the photo of the boy, Marie's text, and the first letter. That letter, God, I'd read it twice already. But now, with what I knew, it cut differently. The praise that once sounded noble now felt like a cover. A story told to make a lie seem worthy of space in someone else's life. I picked it up again. My fingers were trembling, not with fear, but with the kind of fury that lives under skin, deep and quiet. That letter wasn't the whole story. It never was. Something about the envelope's return address itched at me. I opened his old drawer again, bottom one, the stiff one, and dug through folders, receipts, junk. That's when I saw the draft. A file saved on an old tablet. To David, final goodbye. It had never been sent. I tapped it open. Lines of raw pain, confession, longing. A man writing like he didn't know who he was anymore. There was a phrase that stopped me cold. You'll never meet the son you never knew. And another. This life I live in shadows. It's cost me everything. I stared at the screen, didn't blink. My body forgot to move. I just let those words settle on me like wet cement. That was the truth, right there. He'd lived it, felt it, and still never said a word to me. I stood up and pulled open the second drawer. His journals were there. I'd never read them. Not really. They were personal. His. But now they were part of my case. One in particular looked older, leather-bound, worn. I flipped through pages, notes, little sketches, until I found one tucked between entries, folded like he never wanted it to be read. "I can't live two lives, Naomi," it began. He had written that years ago. It talked about guilt, about feeling torn, about a love that was never meant to be shared, about needing to leave. But he never did. I read it aloud. My voice broke halfway through. Not because of the betrayal, but because part of me still remembered the man I married, and the other part was realizing he might have never been that man. I sat back in the chair, wiped under my eyes. My breath came slow, heavy, the kind of breathing you do when you're trying not to break. And then I asked the question I hadn't dared say out loud until now. Did he plan all of this before me? Or did it happen somewhere along the way? When work got too much, when the kids distracted us, when the space between us grew wide enough to hide another life? I thought about how he used to stare out the window in silence after arguments, or those nights he didn't want to talk, just sat with a drink and a locked jaw. Was that guilt? Regret? Or just fatigue from living two versions of himself? He once gave me a book called The Mask We Wear, said it helped him after his friend died. I thought it was about grief. Now I know. It was about the man I married. He was already hiding before I ever knew his name. I reached for the external drive I kept for work backups. Plugged it in. Every photo, every journal page, every call log, copied over. I encrypted the folder and labeled it something simple. Truth. This wasn't about confrontation anymore. This was about preparation. I thought of Gloria, of Marie, of the child. This web was bigger than me now, and I needed to pull the threads when it counted. Not a moment before. I opened my notepad, jotted a letter. It wasn't addressed to him, it was to our kids. You deserve stronger truths than I got. If someday you ask why I stayed quiet, no, I wasn't weak. I was building the foundation to knock it all down. My pen slowed at the last line. Then I turned off the desk lamp. The house felt colder now. I grabbed my phone, ready to head to bed, when I caught something. A shift. A shadow moving just past the crack under the study door. My breath caught in my throat. Had he come home early? Then the handle turned, slow. He stepped in. "Naomi," he said like it was just another night. And before he said anything else, I already knew. The lie was coming. I invited Gloria and Marie over under the guise of catching up. Coffee would be served, small talk exchanged. But I was careful where I placed things. The laptop tucked on the side table, screen facing the wall, ready to flip its narrative. I looked at their faces as they arrived. Gloria's hesitation, Marie's subtle tremor, the clothes they wore as though they'd dressed for something more serious than coffee. I smiled, shook hands, acted casual. Inside I thought, we're not friends now. We're witnesses. They settled in. The cups clinked. Gloria asked how I'd been. Marie nodded as though uncertain. I said I found some old footage from the community center. Nothing special, just something that bothered me. I slid the laptop open, positioned it so they'd see once I pressed play. Then I hit it. The video began. Clara stepping into another house, the same envelope I saw her carry, under the name David Ross. The screen trembled with grain, but it was clear. Gloria gasped. Marie's face went pale. I held my breath and asked softly, "Do you recognize that?" My voice was calm, steady. Inside my throat burned. They passed around phones, documents, call logs, journal pages. Gloria accused me of spying. I met her eyes. "Looking at the man I married is not spying," Marie sobbed. "I can't believe his betrayal." Gloria stammered. "I thought David Ross was just a friend." I quoted softly, "You can believe the lie or believe my life." Silence fell, heavy. Then Clara arrived, unexpected, early. Guess froze. She stepped in, saw the video on screen. She tried to cover with a laugh. "That's old footage, context missing." I didn't flinch. I opened the journal, read a line. I can't live two lives, Naomi. I stated facts, not accusations. Tension crackled. I demanded she explain everything. Voices rose. Words clashed. Neighbors at the party pressed toward screens. Phones lit up. Whispers circled. Clara shrank under it all. She tried to push back, but I held firm. I recited the letter, the midnight calls, the dates. The crowd murmured. The balance shifted. I was no longer hidden in her story. She was there, watching me rewrite ours. She stormed upstairs. A door slammed behind her. I ran after her, my heart pounding. I reached the office door, locked from inside. I knocked, demanded answers. Silence answered me. The doorknob rattled under my hand. My breath hitched. I stood there, waiting, unsure whether to break it down. The lights at the party flickered with warmth, but inside me everything felt cold. I stood by the counter watching people drift in, smiles forced, small talk hollow. This was supposed to be a birthday celebration. Family, friends, but everyone in the room was either part of the lie or about to see it break. Trinice floated from guest to guest, laughter tight, eyes scanning every corner like she was waiting for a storm. She caught my gaze once, held it, then looked away. I felt the weight of the farewell card inside my purse, her handwriting, her goodbye. I wasn't here to make a scene. I was here to unmask the one already playing. The room quieted around dessert. That's when I stood. Before we cut the cake, I said, voice steady, I want to share something meaningful. I pulled out the cards, made copies, passed them out. Each guest received a piece of her parting words. I must go. This isn't you. This isn't us. The room turned silent. Trinice's face flushed deep crimson. She opened her mouth, closed it. I held one card up and read slowly, letting each word slice the air. This life was a borrowed coat I no longer wished to wear. She reached for her wine, missed it. Murmurs began, low at first, confused, curious. And then from near the back of the room, a small voice cut through. Mom, said her niece, all of 7, are you going to disappear next birthday too? The question cracked like thunder. Trinice stood frozen, her hand halfway between heart and mouth. I turned toward the girl. She deserves the truth, I said, softer than I'd expected. No one moved. For a second, even the music paused. Trinice fumbled for words, then sat. Shoulders folded inward, eyes glassy. I gave no comfort. Instead, I stepped to the TV, plugged in the drive. The screen flickered, property records scanned and dated, a deed, a signature, a shift. This is our house, I said. But you'll notice not our names. Her name had been added, quietly, months ago. And then, David Ross. People gasped. A man in the corner said, that's not even legal. Trinice stood again. It was just precaution, paperwork. He asked me to... I read aloud a line from the journal. I gave her what I denied my wife. I let her own what Naomi built. Her lips moved, but nothing came out. I could feel the room tipping, not just against her, but toward me. I stepped forward. I raised this family. I built this life. I deserve the truth. No more versions, no more hiding. Trinice looked to the guests like they might save her. They didn't. Her defenses cracked, not with screams, but with silence. The kind of collapse that doesn't need noise to be loud. And I wasn't just the betrayed anymore. I was the one offering a way out. You can leave, I said, or you can stay and answer. She blinked once, twice, then fled upstairs. I didn't chase. The front door creaked open behind me. I turned, and there he stood, David, or whoever he really was now. He walked past the guests without looking at them, toward the stairs, toward her, and I whispered, just loud enough for the universe to hear, you belong to me no more. I woke up to silence, not the kind that feels peaceful, but the kind that follows a storm, when everything in the house still holds its breath. Chairs were slightly out of place. The hallway rug was bunched from rushed footsteps. An empty glass sat on the counter. The residue of last night clung to everything. I wrapped my hands around a warm mug of coffee and stood at the window. The sun hadn't fully risen, but the horizon was starting to soften. I watched it come up, inch by inch, slow and steady, like healing. I thought about what someone's grandfather used to say. Sometimes the best way to hold on is to let go. I didn't cry. I didn't pace. I didn't even speak. I just stood there in that quiet, letting it settle in me, not as defeat, but as space. Space I'd cleared by standing up for what was mine. By noon, I was on the phone with my lawyer. "I'm ready," I said. "No more waiting." She didn't sound surprised. "The papers are drafted. We can file today." I gave my confirmation, both verbal and written. There wasn't anger in my voice, just steadiness, the kind that only comes after you've carried something too heavy for too long. "This isn't revenge," I told her. "This is peace." I signed my name without flinching. Later that afternoon, while folding laundry, my phone buzzed, a voicemail, unknown number. I almost deleted it without listening. But something made me press play. It was Trinice. Her voice was thinner than I remembered, like it was barely hanging together. "I don't know how to fix what I broke," she said. "I kept thinking if I just waited long enough, the truth would fade." She paused, then added, "If I disappear again, it's not from you. It's from the version of me I failed to fix." That line stayed with me. Long after I deleted the message, I didn't need to reply. That silence was my answer. That evening, I sat the kids down, just the three of us. I didn't drag it out. I didn't sugarcoat. "Your mother and we won't be together anymore." They were old enough to understand, young enough for it to hurt. One looked away, one looked down, but neither interrupted when I said, "She needs to become someone you can believe in again, and I can't do that work for her." We talked for an hour, maybe more. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and that was the start. That night, I went into the bedroom we'd shared and began packing what was left of her things. I folded each shirt carefully, not in rage, but like someone closing a chapter. Then I opened the window, rearranged the bed, moved the dresser. It wasn't about making space, it was about taking it back. Before bed, I walked outside with a single flower, one I'd been meaning to plant for weeks. I dug into the soil and whispered, "No more vanishing." The ground didn't reply, but the silence felt different now. Not empty, just mine. "You don't lose yourself loving the wrong person," I said quietly. "You lose yourself staying there." The next morning, a letter arrived. No name on the envelope, just a return address from Oregon. My hand trembled slightly as I opened it. The first line read, "I didn't disappear this time." And for the first time in years, I didn't flinch reading her words.